Alright, so I just played this game that had a very nice brilliancy in it and some other fun daredevil tactics that I want to take a closer look at here. So my opponent starts the game with e4, I respond e5, my opponent attacks my pawn with knight to f3, I defend with knight to c6, and my opponent brings in the bishop to b5. This is the Ruy Lopez opening. So I respond with a6, trying to kick this bishop away, but my opponent does not want to be kicked away. He actually decides to trade. So he takes my knight here, which is the defender of this pawn, and now I have to find a way to take back. I don't want to mess up my center, so I take back with my b-file pawn, and now I have double pawns, and I'm going to lose a pawn here. So my opponent takes a pawn, and he's up 1 pawn in material now, and has a much better setup. His pawns are looking good. Mine, again, I have those double pawns. My pawn structure is all messed up here, and I don't have any pieces out or any pawns out, but my opponent's got the pawn in the center here and the knight up here in my face. It's got a very strong start. So how do I respond? I say, get out of here to this knight. I bring my pawn to d6, kicking the knight away. Knight pulls back to c4, and now I bring my second knight into the game to f6, attacking his pawn that does not have a defender on it. So instead of putting a defender on it, he's playing aggressive still. He pushes that pawn, attacking my pawn and my knight here. Now that's being defended by his knight, so I don't want to take back, or else I've just really messed up my center and haven't really done anything else. So I don't play his game. Instead, I'm thinking I'm going to start playing my game. So I come ahead with knight to g4, looking to get aggressive in his face. He sees that, brings his knight to f3, kicking my knight away, and I take his pawn, deciding to trade knights. He takes back, and I take back, but because I took that pawn, the material has now evened out. So he was ahead 1, it's even now, but my opponent still is probably ahead. My pawn structure is really looking bad, and I have no pieces out. He's got that queen out, and a nice pawn structure still. And he continues that pawn structure with d3 here. He can't go d4 since I have my pawn and queen on that file. So I respond with bishop to b7, putting my light square bishop on this long light square diagonal, thinking about an attack on his queen, maybe his rook down the line. My opponent now takes the opportunity to castle, getting his king to safety in theory, and bringing his rook into the game. And I respond, immediately attacking that king now that I know the king is in the corner here. Like I said, in theory he's in safety, but now I know he's not going anywhere. So immediately in comes my dark square bishop to c5, putting some pressure on this dark square diagonal. And my opponent sees that, responds with his own bishop to d3. Now here's the first of my psychological tactics comes in. I do decide to take that bishop, hoping that my opponent's going to take with his pawn and mess up the defense on his king a little bit. Unfortunately, he does not do that. He makes the right move and just takes back with his queen. So traded our dark square bishops there. Material is still even. And next, I see that the queen here is eyeing up on this pawn, so I just defend with pawn to f6, strengthening my pawn structure on this side of the board. Finally, my opponent gets his second knight into the game with c3, and I take the opportunity to castle myself, getting my own king to safety and getting my rooks closer to being connected. Now my opponent brings his rook to d1, maybe thinking about pushing this pawn or just eyeing up my queen here. And okay, so here's the first of my daredevil tactics that I was talking about. So as you can see there, I went pawn to c5. Now this pawn does not have a defender, and it actually is being attacked by the queen. And I did see that. That's not a blunder. So why did I do that, you may ask? Well, this is a bit of a gambit here. What I'm thinking here, again, I mentioned this long diagonal. So when I move this pawn, now I have this long diagonal open for my bishop. And also, it allows me to pull my opponent's queen if he does take, which he did do. Pulls the queen away from this defense over here. So, and also, I no longer have double pawns here. I have one less pawn. My opponent is, again, ahead 1 material, but I don't have double pawns anymore, and I have this long diagonal open outside of the pawn here defending the king. So, next daredevil tactic. Take a look at this. You thought that was daredevilish? Look at this one. I go pawn to f5. So why would I go pawn to f5 here? Well, right now, again, I have this strong pawn structure, and I've been talking all game about my bad pawn structure, trying to get back into it with that. Why do I mess up my pawn structure here? I take a defender off of the e5 pawn, and that allows my opponent to take this free pawn here, now going up 2 material. The reason I did that, let's go back here. So again, we have my bishop eyeing up the king here, and what I'm thinking is I need to get my queen over to g5, and then if I can get her to g2, guess what? That's checkmate right here, because the king cannot take back since I have my light square bishop here eyeing up on this g2 square. So in order to get my queen over there, I need to make some sacrifices. Pawn to g5, my opponent thinks this is a blunder, and he takes the bait. Takes the free pawn. Immediately, here comes the attack. So queen finally comes off her starting square to g5, and I am looking for checkmate right here. My opponent does see that, makes the right defense with pawn to g3. I think it's the right defense anyway, for now. And I want to keep up my attack. So I've been trying to kind of play catch up this whole game from that Ruy Lopez opening, but now I'm finding myself for the first time on the attack, and I want to keep up this pressure. So I attack the queen with my rook, and my opponent actually takes this free pawn here. So now my opponent is actually up 3 material. And again, I did see that. It wasn't that I missed that move. I saw that, and guess what? I didn't care, because that's not part of my game plan. This pawn here has nothing to do with my game plan. Look at the board here. I'm down 3 material, but my pieces are working together very well. I have my rooks connected. My queen is here defending this pawn, and both my queen and my bishop are looking at an attack on the king, and my bishop is defending this pawn here. My king kind of hanging out in the corner with these 2 pawns. All my pieces doing their jobs well. There's not as many pieces, but my opponent's pieces are not really in sync right here. I mean, the rooks are connected, but the queen is out here doing her own thing, and this knight is just really not doing anything at this point. So, again, I'm behind in material, but I feel good about my position here. So, getting back to the game, I move my knight, allowing my opponent to take a free pawn here, and then I come in with some venom. So, at this point, let me go back real quick. At this point, I do need to move this bishop. It is not being defended. I was saying that it's defending this pawn, but no one's defending the bishop. So I could move a rook or something like that, but I think that's a pretty weak move. That would disconnect my rooks, and it's kind of passive. Instead, I'm looking at getting in the king's face here. So bishop to f3. If I can snake my queen here and here, that's checkmate. So that's what I'm thinking about. My opponent does not really have any eminent checkmates coming in that I see. Again, he's ahead of material, but what's the game plan here? So since I did reposition my bishop here, my opponent hadn't a chance to get a little momentum and go on the offensive. So my opponent eyes up my rook here, looking to trade rooks since he is ahead in material. He wants to slow down all this momentum that I'm bringing in. He wants to start trading, but that's not what I'm thinking. I'm just going to keep attacking the queen. So I attack his queen. Now he brings his queen here, and at this point, for a second, I think, oh, did I mess up here? I let my queen and my bishop be forked, but no, I actually did not mess up. I find queen to h5 here, defending both my bishop and my pawn. So these 3 pieces, again, all working together very nicely, defending each other, and my opponent's queen just cannot really do anything. So here's my opponent's big blunder. Wants to bring the knight into the game here, so I believe what they were thinking was looking at a fork on e7, forking my king and my rook, but this helps me out because I take a free knight here with my bishop, and it also gets my bishop out of harm's way from this attack on the queen. So big momentum swing for me there. Now my opponent goes to attack my bishop, and I just go right back to where I was. So again, I have this nice setup with my queen defending the f3 square and the f5 square, and I'm still just trying to figure out a way to slide my queen in here. So how am I going to do that? My opponent sees he doesn't really have anything going at this point. The queen, as I said, cannot really do anything. The king is kind of stuck in the corner at this point. And he's just got a bunch of pawns. He does have a big pawn lead on me, so now at this point, I think he's thinking he's going to try to just push these pawns with the rooks and try to get a promotion going because he doesn't really have anything else to do. So I bring my rook to f8. This, I think, may be a bit of a weak move. What I was thinking there was that I wanted to get a defender on the pawn here for when I do eventually move my queen to h3. But I don't think I necessarily needed to do that. Anyway, my opponent continues with that plan of pushing his pawns. Now, here's where I start my my stranglehold. Here's where I start to see the endgame coming in. So I go rook to d8. And what I'm thinking here is I need to move, again, I need to get my queen to this square right here. But my queen, again, is defending both my pawn and my bishop here. And actually, right now, I was talking about my pieces having synergy. Right now, it's anti-synergy. This pawn is preventing my rook from being a defender of this bishop. So as soon as I move my queen here, bishop's gone. So here's what I'm thinking. I want to bring my rook right here and pull my opponent's queen off of this bishop and then sneak in for checkmate. So my opponent pushes this pawn thinking that I can't take back because then his queen takes, and material's actually even right now. So I do take, again, as I talked about why just a second ago, and I go up one material. My opponent, guess what, takes the bait, and that's GG, guys. So right now my opponent's up 4 material, but we're just a few moves away from checkmate. So finally I can bring my queen in. My opponent sees it. He takes like 30 seconds here because he realizes there's just no defense. He cannot move his queen. This is check. Or I'm sorry, his king. This is check. This is check. Can't move the pawns. These rooks are totally useless, and the queen just, there's nothing she can do to defend. She's too far away by moving and taking that rook. She cannot stop the incoming checkmate. So she finally, out of frustration, takes a pawn here. I take the queen, so technically I'm ahead in material. Moves a rook because there's nothing else he can do, and there's the checkmate. So I thought it was a pretty good one. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Have a great night, or day, or morning, anytime. Have a great one.